I remember the day I decided to leave everything behind. A world of endless meetings and corporate demands. A life brimming with artificial smiles and shallow pleasantries. All in the name of career advancement. My name is Ethan Carter, and not so long ago, I was just another cog in the unstoppable machinery of capitalism, dutifully punching in and out, never questioning the purpose behind my labors. Yet, as the months dissolved into years, an emptiness took root in my heart. I craved freedom, the solace of nature, and the quiet hush of a snow-laden mountain far away from email notifications and phone calls. So it was that I retreated to my family's cabin, perched high in the frosty peaks, shielded by ancient pine forests and blanketed in thick white drifts. All I wanted was stillness. Little did I suspect that my longing for solitude would be shattered by the strangest encounter of my life. The cabin, a testament to my ancestors' rugged determination, sat in a valley carved by time, accessible only by a winding road that disappeared under layers of snow during the roughest winter months. My father had always warned me that those mountains kept secrets, that storms weren't the only forces lurking in the wilderness. Still, I left behind all the trappings of modern life and ventured there alone. I remember my first day as though it were yesterday. The wind howled, the sky threatened more snow, and the taste of cold air refreshed my spirit. I stood on the porch, gazing at gray clouds rolling across jagged peaks, and felt a calmness coursing through me. Finally, I thought, true freedom. I had brought only a few supplies, canned food, extra blankets, my old rifle for protection, and a determination to find out what existed in the silence that corporate life would never allow me to hear. My first sign of something amiss came on the evening I arrived, while I unpacked my meager belongings. The fire crackled in the stone hearth, sending warmth dancing across the aged wooden floors, as shadows leapt upon the walls. I was startled by a soft sound outside, a rustle, perhaps an animal seeking shelter from the cold. But the noise was followed by footsteps, light and uncertain, treading on the creaking snow. I glanced through the window but saw nothing except the lingering, swirling flakes illuminated by pale moonlight. Resolving it must have been a passing deer, I dismissed the matter, though a mild sense of unease started to take hold. Little did I know, that was her, Lira, first setting her eyes upon me. In the days that followed, I found the cabin's tranquility both deeply satisfying and strangely unsettling. I roamed the forests, forging my path through towering pines and across frozen streams, discovering peace in the crisp air and majestic vistas. Each day concluded with me writing in a small leather-bound journal, capturing my thoughts as I sought to untangle the meaning of a life lived in seclusion. One cold afternoon, while trudging back from a short hike, I noticed something unusual. The lock on the cabin door, which I'd left latched, lay broken. My heart pounded, and I pushed the door open with caution. Inside, it was faintly warmer than usual, as though the fire had been stoked mere moments earlier, though I knew I hadn't touched it since morning. Looking around, I spotted small disturbances. A few blankets shifted, a chair out of place, footprints, larger than a human female's, yet not quite matching a man's, tracking across the dusty floor. I called out, my voice echoing in the smoky air. No one answered. Yet, a chill danced along my spine, for I sensed someone had been there recently, possibly still hiding in the cabin's small closet or crouching beneath the bed. Slowly, I searched every corner, my old rifle balanced nervously in my hand, though my heart rebelled at the thought of actually firing it. I found no one, but as I looked out the window, I caught a fleeting glimpse, a shadow weaving between the distant trees. It was not a shape I recognized. It stood tall, impossibly graceful, with something like moonlight glistening on what might have been bare skin. And that skin, oh so startling, seemed to shimmer with a slight bluish hue. Just as quickly as I noticed the shape, it disappeared, leaving me breathless and awestruck. For several nights, I struggled to find rest, plagued by half-sighted glimpses of that figure dancing in the corners of my vision. Even during the day, I discovered new clues, footprints in the snow, the outline of a hand on the frosted window, and even strands of a delicate, silver-white hair coiled upon the cabin's wooden chair. One morning, I awoke to see a bowl and spoon placed neatly on the table, as if someone, some being, had tried to mimic the rituals of my daily life. My curiosity swelled, but so did my unease. I questioned whether I had stumbled upon a fugitive, maybe someone hiding from the authorities, or perhaps a lonely wanderer afflicted with a strange medical condition. I never once truly believed it could be an extraterrestrial being, for that seemed too far removed from reality, something belonging only in the realm of science fiction. Nonetheless, as a cautious peace offering, I began to leave out small gifts by the back door each morning: a can of fruit, a warm blanket, a note, though I doubted my visitor could read English, urging them to take what they needed. I prayed this would convince whoever, or whatever, it was that I meant no harm. Each evening, I'd return from a hike or a moment by the frozen lake to discover some items taken, others left behind. Strangest of all were the times I found the note carefully folded and returned, as though examined and deemed undecipherable. Day by day, the presence drew closer to me, in spirit if not in sight. That's how I first won her trust. I remember the exact moment we truly saw each other face to face, like a memory carved in bright silver. It was late evening, a swirling snowfall painting the mountains white. My cabin's single lantern illuminated the humble interior, revealing bare walls and simple furniture. I heard her gentle step before I glimpsed her. At first, she hovered by the threshold, framed by a swirl of snow. Then she quietly stepped inside, her tall figure stooping to clear the doorway, her skin a luminous pale blue that seemed to flicker with each pulse of her heart. Her eyes, large and an even deeper shade of blue, searched me with equal parts fear and curiosity. I gasped in shock, dropping the spoon I held in my hand. She recoiled, pressing her back against the wall, a silent apology etched into her glowing features, as though she longed to vanish. For a moment, I was certain I was dreaming. Yet, the sound of the wind outside was too real, the sensation of the wooden floor under my feet too solid. Gathering my courage, I whispered something, though I cannot recall what. An inane greeting, perhaps. She tilted her head, her silvery hair cascading over her shoulders, and let out a soft, melodic hum. We stood like that for what felt like hours, two strangers from different worlds, drawn together by a curious mixture of dread and kindness. I dared to step closer. She tensed, ready to bolt, but I lifted my hands, palms forward to show I carried no weapon. Her rigid posture softened fractionally. Then she looked down, pointing to the floor. It was a simple sign, but I understood. She was cold, exhausted, and in need of safety. Without a word, I led her to the fire. She sat on the floor, near enough to feel the heat, yet still cautious of me. In her deep blue eyes, I saw intelligence and an echo of unimaginable sorrow. She gestured vaguely, placing a slender hand upon her chest, as though trying to convey something. Her lips moved in an almost silent voice, forming a word I could not interpret. Time stretched thin as we attempted a clumsy conversation, a dance of gestures, nods, and quiet hums. Finally, with a shaky breath, she pronounced a single syllable: Lyra. It sounded as though it was shaped by unfamiliar vocal cords, yet resonated sweetly. I repeated her name, carefully forming the consonants on my tongue, and she nodded, relieved. Then, lifting my own hand, I said Ethan. She repeated my name in her soft, melodic voice, stumbling over the new sound. As the night wore on, our communication became less frenetic. She seemed adept at interpreting my gestures, as though fluent in body language and emotion. I offered her a bowl of warm broth. She sniffed it with curiosity, her luminous eyes flickering. The first sip she took nearly caused her to drop the spoon, as though her body had never tasted such an earthy flavor. Gradually, however, she accepted the nourishment. I suppose even beings from distant stars get hungry, or so I inferred. In the flickering light, I saw more details, the faint iridescence shimmering along her forearms, the way her hair seemed almost weightless, and a subtle curve to her body that hinted at a hidden fragility. This was no ordinary woman, that much was clear, but a traveler from realms unknown. When dawn arrived, I expected her to be gone, vanishing into the snow-laden forest as she had on previous nights. But she remained, slumbering lightly against the wall beside the fire, her breath slow and steady. Her presence filled me with equal measures of concern and awe. At sunrise, she stirred, and for a moment, her eyes flashed with panic, as though she'd forgotten where she was. Then she saw me, and saw I had not harmed her, and she relaxed once more. I busied myself brewing coffee, hoping the scent might comfort her, even if she was unaccustomed to human beverages. She watched me, curiosity evident in her gaze, as though every mundane human action was an enigma worth unraveling. Within a few days, an unspoken routine developed between us. I ventured into the woods to gather firewood, always conscious that she might watch me from a distance. I sometimes heard her humming softly in the cabin when she believed she was alone. I tried to teach her simple English words, holding objects aloft and enunciating carefully. She learned quickly, her mind grasping each syllable with startling ease. Her voice, when she spoke, held a gentle harmony, like wind chimes swaying in a breeze. I discovered that she was far from fragile. Her height alone hinted at an inner strength, but she was deeply cautious, like a deer aware of hidden dangers. Over time, she confided in me, haltingly, that she had escaped from something, though my limited understanding of her whispered confessions provided few details. One frigid afternoon, as we sat together by the fire, she touched her lower abdomen, her glowing features cloaked in an expression that spoke of weariness and hope intertwined. At first, I could not fathom the significance, but she uttered a few shaky words. "Child, must protect." My heart lurched. She was pregnant, carrying a life within her, an unborn child whose origins defied everything I knew. I reached for her hand, murmuring that she was safe here. Her other hand pressed again upon her belly, her blue eyes shining with a mother's fierce devotion. The revelations of that day left me reeling, yet also filled me with renewed resolve. If she was indeed on the run, what threat could possibly pursue her to these snowy mountains? I could not let anything harm her or her unborn child. Though our uncertain peace was momentarily sweet, the storm gathering around us would not remain at bay forever. News of strange sightings in the mountains began to spread among the local villagers, carried by hushed voices in the lone bar at the foot of the winding road, or by rumors drifting up from curious hikers. On supply runs, I overheard talk of otherworldly lights and mysterious footprints. A few locals claimed to have spotted a blue ghost moving through the pines at night. I had no doubt they referred to Lira. Fear and fascination often travel hand in hand, and soon I noticed unfamiliar vehicles parked where none had business being. Dark-suited figures loitered in inconspicuous vans, eyes hidden behind tinted windows. They were hunting. Although I did not know their employer, government agency, secret corporation, or something more sinister, I knew they were searching for her. One night, in the midst of a fierce blizzard, I awoke to pounding on the cabin door. Lira sat upright at once, terror etched upon her face. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder before walking to the entrance, my heart thundering in my chest. Opening the door only a crack, I saw a man swathed in black, half his face obscured by a hood and mask. Behind him, I could faintly make out others, armed and bracing themselves against the howling wind. "We're from the search and rescue," he shouted, voice muffled. "Looking for a missing hiker. Have you seen anyone unusual?" I responded with a shaky half-truth, claiming I had not seen another soul in weeks. But the man's gaze flicked past me, scanning the dim interior as though expecting to spot something out of place. After a tense moment, he grunted, nodded curtly, and signaled his cohorts. They vanished into the darkness. I closed the door, exhaling slowly. Lyra's eyes were wide, her posture rigid, fear radiating from her like a tangible aura. Carefully, I lowered myself beside her, draping a blanket around her shoulders. My mind raced. We were not safe here, not anymore. These hunters, whoever they were, would search every remote crevice, scale every ridge, and follow every lead to track her down. For the first time, I wished for more than just an old rifle and my good intentions. Lyra's hand trembled in mine as she whispered, "They want me. No mercy." I pressed my lips together, uncertain of how to respond. But deep inside, my resolve crystallized. I would protect her, whatever the cost. In the days that followed, we laid low, keeping the curtains drawn and the cabin dark after sundown. I carefully rationed the logs for the fire, fearing the glow could attract unwanted attention from the ridges above. When absolutely necessary, I ventured out to check for signs of those hunters, bracing myself against biting winds as I scanned the snow for footprints or tire tracks. Sometimes I caught glimpses of the black-clad figures. They combed the woods with flashlights, pacing meticulously, leaving no stone unturned. Once, while crouched behind a thick trunk, my breath nearly froze in my lungs as one of them passed within arm's reach, the beam of his flashlight dancing across the snow. I remained still, blood pounding in my ears, until he moved on. That night, I returned to the cabin and found Lyra trembling, half sobbing, convinced that each passing minute brought doom closer. Despite the overwhelming danger, something extraordinary blossomed in those moments of peril and vulnerability. Lyra and I, bound by necessity, found our hearts intertwined. Her gratitude for my protection expressed itself in lingering looks and gentle smiles. I discovered a courage within me that I had not known existed, driven by an intense desire to shield her from a world that might exploit or destroy her. We communicated more fluidly now, our shared language a blend of her softly spoken English and wordless understanding. One evening, in the dim lantern light, she sang to me in her native tongue, a lilting melody that spoke of heartbreak, exile, and a yearning for home. Though I comprehended none of the alien words, I felt her sorrow keenly. The tears in her eyes, the trembling in her voice, conveyed more than any translation could. Then came the darkest hour. Late one night, Lyra woke me from a restless doze, her face contorted in pain. She clutched her belly, breathing raggedly, eyes brimming with anguish. The child was stirring, perhaps arriving sooner than we had expected. As I tried to calm her, footsteps thundered around the cabin. The hunters had arrived in force. The banging on the door echoed in the small space like thunderclaps, accompanied by shouts. "Open up!" My mind raced, heart hammering against my ribcage. Lyra was in labor, or close to it, and these men were mere moments away from capturing her. I grabbed the rifle, motioning for Lyra to hide in the back room. She staggered to her feet, but pain seized her, causing her to cry out in a plaintive, keening wail. That was all the men outside needed to confirm their prey was inside. With a final smashing blow, the front door burst open, shards of wood scattering across the floor. 3 men in tactical gear rushed in, rifles raised, scanning the room with professional precision. I leveled my old weapon at them, my hands shaking, and shouted for them to stay back. I knew I was outgunned. Yet, something surprising happened. Lyra, despite her agony, stepped forward, eyes ablaze with a fierce light. She raised one hand, and for a brief instant, the air around her seemed to shimmer like a heat wave. The men hesitated, apparently caught off guard by this unearthly spectacle. Then, with a force that defied explanation, a pulse of energy exploded from Lyra's outstretched arm, sending sparks dancing along the cabin walls. The men were flung backward, crashing into the snow outside, leaving me in stunned disbelief. Gasping for breath, Lyra slumped forward, her luminous skin flickering. I rushed to her side, gently lowering her onto the blankets. The child's arrival was imminent. No time remained to find better shelter, no time to doubt my abilities. The howling wind outside and the shouts of the scattered men formed a chaotic backdrop to the most critical moment of our lives. My heart pounded as I attempted to recall the first aid courses I had taken years ago, never imagining I might need to help deliver a baby, much less an alien baby. Sweat beaded upon Lyra's forehead, her breathing ragged. I talked to her softly, telling her to hold on, to breathe as I had seen in medical dramas. She gripped my hand with surprising strength, her eyes pleading for reassurance. A fresh surge of noise from outside told me the hunters were regrouping. Through the open doorway, I caught sight of flashlights bobbing in the gloom. I placed a trembling hand on Lyra's cheek, promising I would keep them away. Standing, I grabbed the rifle once more and positioned myself by the ruined door. My fingers went numb with terror as the dark silhouettes appeared, rifles aimed. But a sudden burst of light erupted behind them, some malfunction or phenomenon triggered by Lyra's energy. The men recoiled in confusion. I aimed low, firing a warning shot into the snow. They dove for cover, exchanging frantic shouts. Seizing this reprieve, I barricaded the shattered entrance as best as I could with a heavy cupboard, then dashed back to Lyra's side. Her cries had grown urgent, each breath ragged and soaked in fear. I knelt and did my best to help, my mind spinning with 1,000 doubts. Yet, nature guided her body, and with a final, Wrenching effort, an infant's wail filled the cabin. Tiny, glowing skin, tinged blue as her mother's, and small hands opening to greet the world. Tears blurred my vision as I held Lyra's daughter, my heart near to bursting with awe. Outside, footsteps pounded once again. My heart sank, realizing they would not relent. We were trapped, exhausted, vulnerable. Still, something in me refused to surrender. If this was to be our last stand, then so be it. I handed the child to Lyra, who cradled her lovingly. The baby's cries grew soft, her own tiny glow pulsing in time with her mother's. As I prepared for a hopeless defense, a sharp whistle pierced the night. Then another, and another. Soon, the men's loud shouts turned to confusion. Peering through a shattered window, I saw more lights, dozens of them, moving swiftly through the trees. At first, I feared reinforcements for the hunters, but the lights fanned out, and I realized they were the local forest rangers, accompanied by concerned villagers. I recognized some of their faces, men and women from the foothills, armed not with rifles, but with a quiet determination to ward off trespassers. Apparently, my earlier visits, the rumors swirling through the mountains, and the suspicious activities of these black-clad men had prompted the community to band together. Confronted by a unified force, the hunters retreated, shouting curses and promises of return, but clearly outnumbered. Their vehicles roared to life, and within minutes, they vanished into the swirling snow, leaving only tire marks and churned-up drifts behind. Inside the cabin, I struggled to catch my breath, relief so intense it made me weak. Lyra cradled her newborn daughter, tears of elation mingling with exhaustion. I gently brushed damp hair away from her forehead, murmuring that it was over. The baby, so fragile and radiant, quieted, her eyes fluttering open for the first time. In them, I saw innocence, hope, and a tiny reflection of my own awestruck face. Outside, a gentle knock replaced the violent pounding from before. The local rangers had come to check on me, but I asked them to wait while I composed myself. Lyra and I shared a meaningful glance, understanding that her secret was only growing more impossible to hide, yet also sensing a shift had occurred in the hearts of those living in these mountains. Fear might linger, but compassion had come to our rescue in the 11th hour. Over the next weeks, a fragile peace descended upon our mountain sanctuary. The rangers turned a blind eye to the strange happenings up at my cabin, perhaps suspecting something out of the ordinary, yet unwilling to condemn a mother and child to pursuit. The villagers, rumor-loving though they were, proved protective of their own, as well as those they considered under their watch, offering discreet assistance. They never intruded directly, but on cold mornings, I sometimes found fresh supplies left on my porch, blankets, canned vegetables, bandages, anonymous gifts from neighbors who believed in extending kindness when needed. Meanwhile, Lyra slowly recovered from the ordeal, her child blossoming with each passing day. The baby laughed at the crackle of the fire, at the rustle of pine branches outside, at the gentle songs her mother sang in that melodious alien tongue. Over time, I found myself adapting to fatherhood in the most extraordinary circumstances. I learned to cradle this little being so as not to jostle her too much. I learned her rhythms, the midnight cries that signaled hunger, the soft cooing that meant she was content, the luminous flicker of her skin that accompanied her every emotion. Lyra, while protective and nurturing, remained somewhat haunted by the specter of those who hunted her. She confided more in me, her English improving daily, her stories of an ancient civilization far beyond Earth's boundaries gradually surfacing. She spoke of a dying world, ravaged by forces I could scarcely imagine, and of a desperate journey across the stars. She was, as far as she knew, the last of her kind. That knowledge weighed heavily upon her heart. I listened, comforting her, promising that she and our daughter had a safe refuge here in this snowy domain. Life, like the snows of winter, slowly thawed into a gentler existence. The months rolled on, and the baby, whom we named Aurea, a blend of Lyra's language and my own penchant for naming, took her first trembling steps upon the worn cabin floorboards. Each new milestone filled us with joy, an affirmation that hope could flourish even in the face of cosmic exiles and clandestine threats. Though we always remained vigilant, the hunters did not reappear. Perhaps they retreated to conspire anew, Or perhaps they lost track of Lyra in the labyrinth of official denial and local silence. Either way, the mountains guarded us, just as they had for generations of my family. One mild spring day, a year after Oria's birth, I ventured with Lyra and our daughter beyond the cabin, taking slow, cautious steps along a winding trail scattered with patches of melting snow. Lyra marveled at the budding greenery, gently touching the fresh shoots of grass. It was Oria's first time outside for more than a few minutes, and her eyes widened in wonder at the tapestry of the natural world. We found ourselves by a clear stream, its icy waters rushing over smooth stones. Lyra knelt, placing Oria's tiny feet in the edge of the flow, laughing softly at the child's delighted squeal. I stood behind them, an unspoken sense of belonging thrumming through me. In that moment, I felt the earth itself welcome Lyra and Oria, weaving them into the tapestry of life. They were no longer outcasts, but a small family brimming with love. The seasons turned, each bringing a new chapter. Lyra and I repaired the cabin together, replacing rotted wood, adding a makeshift nursery in one corner, and even building a new chimney to better withstand the savage winter storms. We foraged for berries and mushrooms, setting up a small garden plot in the short summer months. Oria toddled among the rows, giggling whenever a curious beetle scurried by. In our free time, we taught her bits of both English and Lyra's native tongue, weaving a bilingual melody of lullabies and bedtime tales. Each night, after putting Oria to sleep, Lyra and I would sit beneath the stars on the small porch, her head resting upon my shoulder, while we contemplated the cosmos above. Sometimes, she pointed at a bright star or cluster, murmuring tales of her distant home, explaining the constellations as her people had known them. My heart ached each time, understanding that she missed a place she would never see again, yet also rejoicing that she chose this new life with us. Though news of the hunter's pursuit grew faint, I was not naive enough to believe they had abandoned the chase forever. My father's old hunting rifle was kept near, and I had placed new locks and hidden cameras around the property. An uneasy truce existed between us and the outside world, but I prayed each day that we'd be granted the gift of peace, that our remote cabin, nestled in the protective arms of the mountains, would continue to shield Lyra and Oria from harm. As the years passed, the locals grew even more protective, weaving stories of treacherous bears and impassable roads to deter outsiders from wandering too close. As far as they were concerned, I was a solitary soul who'd chosen a hermit's life, a curiosity, yet harmless. They did not suspect the radiant, blue-skinned woman or the child who shone like a tiny star in the darkness of the forest. At length, we established a careful equilibrium. I would occasionally trek to the nearby township for supplies, wearing a bright smile that hid the secret of my extraordinary family. Each time, I found small notes tucked into my bag by sympathetic neighbors, wishing me well, offering seasonal vegetables from their gardens, or even inviting me to share a holiday meal should I wish for company. Their kindness was a balm, though I politely declined most invitations, fearful that too much socializing might unravel our delicate secret. On rare occasions, Lyra joined me at the edge of the village, veiled in a hooded coat, marveling at the quaint wooden buildings and market stalls, each a testament to human craftsmanship and resilience. She rarely spoke to strangers, but I could tell she absorbed everything, storing it all in her vivid memory. Through it all, Oria grew. Year by year, she blossomed from a toddling infant into a bright-eyed child, brimming with curiosity and energy. Her luminous blue skin, inherited from her mother, became more subdued over time, though she still emitted a faint glow when overwhelmed by emotion. She adored the forest, chasing after butterflies and gathering pine cones, always returning to show us her treasures with gleeful pride. At night, she'd nestle between Lyra and me, gazing at picture books or listening to us tell stories, some from Earth, some from Lyra's faraway world, braided together in a tapestry of cosmic wonder. She became the bridge linking our two realms, embodying a future shaped not by fear, but by the promise of unity. I recall the day Oria asked why she looked different from me. Lyra gently explained that we come from different paths in the grand tapestry of existence, but that love binds us all. Oria listened intently, then wrapped her small arms around my neck and called me Papa. My heart soared, and tears glistened in my eyes. In that moment, every hardship, every battle, felt like a small price to pay for the gift of her trust and love. Lira, watching us, smiled softly, an expression of quiet gratitude lighting her features. Eventually, peace became our new normal. The harsh winters returned each year, yet within our cabin, laughter prevailed. I taught Oria how to fish in the icy streams come springtime, how to identify edible mushrooms, how to appreciate the subtle shifts of cloud formations in the wide mountain skies. Lira introduced us to healing salves made from local herbs, adapted from knowledge gleaned from her own cultural traditions. She sang lullabies in her musical alien tongue each night, instilling in Oria the legacy of her distant kin. Occasionally, we caught glimpses of watchers in the forest, but they kept their distance, perhaps having concluded that mother and child were no threat at all, or perhaps some deeper forces had intervened. Regardless, we let each day unfold with newfound optimism. Years passed like pages in a cherished story, each chapter more vivid than the last. Oria grew taller, her once uncertain steps giving way to confident strides. Her eyes shone with intelligence, a quick mind that devoured every shred of knowledge we offered. Sometimes, Lira gazed at her daughter with a kind of bittersweet pride, marveling at a life that blended two worlds. As for me, the corporate cubicles and suits of my past seemed like distant phantoms. I no longer longed for ambition or wealth. Instead, I found completeness in the steady rhythm of chopping wood, brewing tea at dawn, and whispering good night to my family beneath the watchful gaze of 1,000 silent stars. I often reflect on the improbable series of events that brought Lira to my door, battered by the storm, carrying the hope of a new life within her. She might have chosen any other refuge, if it existed, or hidden herself away until her last breath. Yet fate, or providence, led her to me, to us. In saving her, I saved myself from a life of hollow routine, discovering instead a world of wonder tucked away in a secret corner of the mountains. And now, each day, I am reminded of the boundless capacity for love that can blossom between two strangers, no matter how vastly different their origins may be. But perhaps the greatest affirmation came when Oria, now older, her sparkling eyes brimming with warmth, ran up to me in the pale light of morning and exclaimed, "Papa, can you teach me how to read the stars?" Her mother stood nearby, luminous and proud, her silvery hair catching the first rays of sun. I smiled, nodding, my throat tight with emotion. "Yes," I answered. "I'll teach you everything I know, though you'll have even more to teach me." The three of us ventured onto the porch, the crisp mountain air invigorating as we gazed at the fading night sky. Lira pressed close to my side, her hand entwined with mine, and we stood there as a family, human and alien, and a little girl who encompassed the best of both worlds, united in a love that transcended stars and shadows alike. Though we do not know what the future holds, or if one day new pursuers might emerge from the far corners of the earth, or even beyond, we live with courage in our hearts. We have carved out a life here in the mountains, forging a sanctuary brimming with warmth and acceptance. And in that life, we have found not merely survival, but joy. Our days are filled with small victories, the crackle of the fire in winter, the sweet taste of wild berries in summer, the tender moments when Oria learns a new word or a new song. We bear witness to the miracle of growth, of resilience, of hope that refuses to die despite any darkness lurking beyond our safe haven. Thus, as time weaves our lives into the tapestry of these ancient mountains, our story continues, fueled by the memories of what we have endured and the possibilities that stretch out before us. Lira's presence remains a beacon of grace and mystery, and Oria's laughter resonates like a promise for tomorrow. And so, in this hidden retreat, far from the clamor of corporate towers and prying eyes, we find ourselves bound by a love stronger than fear. We have the freedom to dream of a future where the lines between worlds blend seamlessly, a testament to what can happen when compassion triumphs over suspicion. The sun rises once more, bathing our cabin in golden light, driving away any lingering shadows. I breathe deeply, cherishing the crisp mountain air, embracing the day's newness. Lira stands beside me, tall and serene, as Oria scampers around the yard. A gentle hush envelopes us, a promise of peace, of renewal. And there, in the harmony of that moment, I know the end of our story is not truly an end, but the beginning of a new chapter filled with love, courage, and belonging. We have found happiness here, in this sanctuary of snow and starlight, and no matter what may come, we will face it together. In that shared resolve lies our greatest triumph, our happy ending upon this earth, woven from the threads of two distant worlds, forever united by hope.